Good day, everyone. You're welcome to another edition of How to Help Dyslexics ages 5 to 7. The last class we had how to help children age 3 to 4 years. We looked at everything. Okay. Now, let's look at how to help children ages 5 to 7 years. This is when school starts. Remember, I told you we discussed in the last class that in Nigeria, the time we start school is quite different. Same goes with the UK and the US. So it's very important for a teacher to be able to blend, to be very innovative. And the school as a whole, they should work hand in hand. They should be very innovative when they want to go through all these approaches. Now, when children start school, they are exposed to written texts. First, follow the step from this list, the list I'm going to give now, before teaching phonics. Give them phonological awareness instruction. Phonological awareness instruction, very important. Don't just introduce phonics. There's a way we've been doing it that we need to really correct. So when we know better, we do better. So number one thing, use pictures and spoken language, not written words yet. You remember when they were 3 to 4, we were using the audio visual. We talked about using audio visual, making multi-sensory, using all the senses involved. Now use picture and spoken language, not written words yet, to introduce to them. I've said it over and over again that this can work for neurotypicals, it can work for neurodivergents. So for the purpose of meeting all pupils, all learners of various needs, it's better you use this approach. Okay, use pictures and spoken language, pictures and spoken language, not written words yet. Now the next step to take from the list is use CVC words, e.g. cat, is a CVC. What's a CVC? Cat is a CVC word. What's the CVC word? It's a CVC is just short form of a word made up of a consonant, vowel, consonant. So it's very important for them to when you're talking about letters, basically they are grouped into the vowel and the consonant. The next thing to look out for when you're helping them in reading is, can they identify the beginning sound? Remember, we said there are different types of dyslexics. Some, you'll see they, and they'll call it the. That's because the way their brains are processing it, they can just see the first 3. They can't see the last. And you say that, didn't you see the Y there? Why have you said they instead of they? So you have to start checking out all these things. So can they identify the beginning sound in the word cat, for instance? Can they identify k there? That is, can they identify the beginning sound k? Can they identify the middle sound ah? Can they identify the end sound t? Can they tell how many sounds make up cat? Remember, in ages 3 and 4, all these things ought to be introduced to them. So for them to meet up their reading milestones, you must try to start identifying all these things and helping them if they cannot. Now, next, teach them how to substitute a sound, e.g. swap the first letter k to h to make hot. So substitute it. When you've put k, remember, we use pictures and spoken language. In these first 2 years, they are using intervention. We are intervening. So teach them how to swap. Then what's the next thing? Continue talking to them about language. You are testing their comprehension. When you keep talking to them about language, you're discussing it using pictures and spoken language. Remember, this is not a time to suppress them. Let them express themselves. This is not the time to start to give them emotional or education abuse. Sometimes it may look, is this person talking, is saying things out of context? And you're like, Dari, is that what is there? This child is saying the wrong thing. Let them express themselves. And the more they express themselves, the better you know about them. Okay? So continue talking to them about the language, testing their comprehension. Tell me, you can go to them, each of them. Tell me, how many different hearts can you think of? The child, remember, it's not only about identifying it, knowing cat, heart. What does it mean? Can they comprehend it? Now, you start chef. Although in Nigeria, we prefer using the word cap. So whatever it is we are using. But now, remember, I'm using the British. Now, a chef's hat. Do they know what a hat is? Or in Nigeria, as the case may be, you can say a chef's cap. Let them comprehend that is a cap. The police is cap. Remember, you're not speaking in diction. You want them to identify all these things. They are struggling learners. And we've already assessed them, their environment. What does their environment call it? So when you say police, call it the way they would understand it. Yes, we want to all speak right. But for these struggling learners, make them very familiar with it. Then when they've already familiarized themselves with it, you can now start using diction. You can now start, it becomes very easy. But someone who is not familiar with something, how does the person, transit to diction? Very important. So police hat or cap, as the case may be. Then the French beret, or use the ones in the church. Oh, did your mom wear a hat to the church today? Baseball cap. Show them different types of cap. Let them, as you're showing them various types, it is processing in their heads. They are beginning to understand it, that, oh, this is it. Now, explain the concept of rhyming, that when the first sound is changed to a different one, the word rhymes. For instance, you've turned k in the word cat. You've put r, rat. Let them understand they are all rhyming. You're just changing the first letter. But all those words, cat, rat, pat, bat, they rhyme. Teach them rhyming. So when they know it, they're able to work with it. Can they think of a word that rhymes with cat? Then give them. Think about it. After you've shown them, begin to give them back. You're getting a feedback. Cat, bat, sat. The rhymes will make them know hat. They may just say something different. We are not saying guess. Guessing actually is not learning. Guessing is not knowing. So help them to think. Is when someone has comprehended, the person can now think in depth. Can think about it. Oh, this is it. Now, we must also remember that language isn't only about what is on the written page. It's not only about what is on the written page. It is also about the spoken word. Start to introduce the letters after they have good phonological awareness. Phonological awareness, then start replacing the letters. It's a gradual process. Slowly but surely, with consistency, with persistence, they will get it. Okay, let's go further. Introduce the letters and show them how to build words. Use only decodable books. What do you mean by decodable books? Decodable books are books filled with words that can decode themselves. You can improvise, you can form yours. Now, what does it mean to decode? You might be asking, what is this decode we keep talking about? Decoding is reading by understanding and blending sounds in a word. Now, we must know that once you are able to decode, you can figure out how to read any new word. Decoding is an essential reading skill. It's something like, let's use this instance. I have a phone, then I have a passcode. Now, who can have access to my phone? Is anybody that can, put the code? Same thing with reading. Is when they can decode it that shows they understand it. So it's very important for them to decode. Now, guessing at the word and getting it right isn't reading. Dyslexics don't need to guess. Once they know it, they know it. And even neurotypical, when someone says guess, the person is wanting you to think about what you do not know. Guess, what did I eat today? Then you begin to think. Is this something common? Is it something uncommon? That means you do not know. But if I say something like, I had, guess what I had? I had food. It's a carbohydrate. It starts with letter R. Majority of people will say rice first, isn't it? Because they were able to decode. They comprehended that there is a carbohydrate, and that carbohydrate, which is a staple food, that okay, I said I had, starts with letter R, and it's rice. So guessing at the word and getting it right isn't reading. They must decode it. It's very important to decode. Reading the same sentence over and over again might help the child remember the story, but it won't help a child learn to read each word, which is the reason why it's important to decode. It is important that the child understands how to decode each word so that they can read it in another context. So when a child reads, that's why I've heard instances of a child reading a passage and is unable to answer the question. And he said, you read the passage. The child is unable to decode. That is it. The child is unable to decode. So that is why it's very important for us to be giving intervention as and when due, appropriately. Check to see if they are reciting the words from memory without looking at the words. Now check to see. It's when, some of them have memory issues. So help them. That's why you do the pause, breathe. Help them to know, have they assimilated? Has assimilation taken place? What they've ingested in their memory, has assimilation taken place? So you can just play something like a game. Let's see. All right. Did you get it right? If you watch the movie again, that Michael, after this class, please, you can maybe at your leisure time, at another time, like I've said before, it's not at a go you get everything. For every time you look at this, you read it, you study it, you ingest, digest, you begin to see things in another perspective. Ideas will keep coming onto you. Remember, these dyslexics are different. So you must be very innovative such that you can meet each and every one of them at the point of their needs. So another thing you have to do is to check if they are reciting the words from memory without looking at the words. So if the child can recite from the memory, that means the child is having a good comprehension. The child can visualize it. Now let's go to the sounds. Correct sound. It is important to say the word crisp and clear without adding a vowel. Now, when they are learning their letter sounds, for example, the letter P. No, po. Po. Letter P says po. No. P. 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 Not po. You don't have to add anything to it, because when you start saying po, this one is trying to process it. Or is there oil in it again? So it's very important. Crisp and clear. Make it crisp and clear. Start with small group of letters. Don't rush them. Take it bit by bit. Start with small groups of letter, e.g., you can start with the s, at, like the SATPRN, and teach them how to blend the sounds together to make a word. Now, when you're starting with the AT, this is what I do. Improvisation is needed everywhere. There was a struggling learner that I took, although later on I had to stop taking the struggling learner because I observed he had more behavioral issues than academic issues, and I observed the behavioral issues were from his home. So a home where they are not even willing to correct it, it becomes more difficult for the teacher. I do not teach conventionally. Again, I do more of homeschooling. So I observed that this is what I did for the child. We got cardboards. Then I wrote all the letters there. After I wrote all the letters, we started with the letter sounds. Then after we've done the 2 letter sounds, we started with single letter sounds. Then we started doubling it. Then as we started the letter sound, we started changing. For instance, when we did the AT, then we put S. You can use cardboard, replace it, you cut them into small pieces, then start using it. Each child has theirs, and start changing it. Or each child might not have theirs. You use it in class. You start changing it. Okay, put letter P. What does it sound? What is it? Sound it. Blend it. What is that? That is how learning takes place. We're even virtually not even using our exercise books, because they had to, for you to be able to read, you have to undergo all these parts. We're not using the notes, and learning was taking place. In 3 months, he was doing very good, if not because of the behavioral aspect and the collaborators. Those I wanted to collaborate with me were not working hand in hand with me, so I had to stop it. Now, help them after they've done all this. Help them write the words. After they've written the words, introduce a few of the first high frequency words to them. High frequency words are the tricky words. We've listed example, few of them. Not that I just introduce everything all at once to them. Gradually, surely, slowly, but surely, they will definitely get it. Now, help the child read a short sentence. Not that he's going to the market. You just started. He came to the house yesterday. It becomes voluminous and the brain cannot process it just at once. So slow and steady win the race. Slowly but surely. So now help the child read a short sentence. Tap the tin. Please, let's note that you must move from the known to unknown. Tap the tin. Then the child gradually begins to read that way. Don't use flashcards. I know many schools use flashcards, but let's take this, notice. Don't use flashcards to try and get them to memorize the high frequency words. The high frequency words can also be known as the tricky words. The way high frequency words look. Encourage them to try and sound out as much of the word as they can. Don't try to let them sound. You are using the flashcards. Don't let them sound using flashcards. Make sure do it repetitively. Repetition is the mother of learning. So that is how you help ages 5 to 7. It's gradual. Make it consistent. And we must also note, I must also add to this, that when you are teaching them, it's not necessary it is lengthy. Their brains are processing everything at once. 1 hour productive. It's not by so much activity, productivity. I said it. I was just taking this child for 2 days in a week. How many days? Friday, Saturday, this struggling learner that I said had behavioral issues. And in 2 months, he was able to get it 2 times. So that's 4 hours in a week. And he was getting it. We use so many assistive technology because at his age, at 13, he would need intervention and accommodation. We're going to talk more about that in our next class.